there, tomorrow. Welcome to the show. Today we have some pretty exciting stuff on the docket. Jared?
I'm going to be doing my first ever launch minute, and we're going to see how that goes in just a bit, because there's been quite a few launches this week.
Yes, there have. So we will see, just like a normal launch, whether this crash and burns or it successfully goes into space.
Yes.
Beautiful. And Athena, what are you excited to talk to us about today?
Oh man, some astronomers have discovered an exoplanet right where Gene Roddenberry said Vulcan would be.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Star Trek's Gene Roddenberry discovered an exoplanet.
Yep.
What am I doing with my life?
Predicted.
Dear goodness,
Yeah.
that's insane. All right, and what do we have on the observation deck, Lisa?
Well, I have a bunch of science art experts who are going to talk to us about how we can all experience lunar spaceflight.
I'm all about that. Lunar space flight, take us to the moon, maybe bring us back. Tomorrow, 11.37 starts right now.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
And thank you for joining us. My name is Jade. I'll be your host for today. I have wrangled a Jared and an Athena as well. But before we dive into those juicy news stories, I think Jared has a few launch minutes he'd like to share with us.
Yes,
Jared?
I'm just going to stretch out here a little bit,
out.
get myself ready to
Get
go.
you pumped.
Yeah, we've got 3 rockets this week, which means I've got 3 minutes to tell you about the 3 rockets in the 3 minutes. So whenever we're ready to go, I'm ready to go, because the first up, we have the Indian Space Research Organization Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle launching in the core alone configuration. That just means it's the core, no solid rocket boosters or anything, from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in India. It launched Sunday, September 16th at 16:38 Coordinated Universal Time. The payload was a Novastar 1, which is a public-private partnership with the British government and Surrey Satellite Technology for radar imaging, both in daylight and nighttime hours. And also there was SSTL S1-4, which is an observation satellite, uses an optical camera and telescope. It was also built by Surrey Satellite Technology. And India continues to add up its launches at a steady pace. And this variant of the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle launcher, the core alone one, is a perfect 12 out of 12 on successes. Not to mention, Novastar 1 is the UK's first synthetic aperture radar satellite. So congratulations to all groups involved with that. So that's really cool. Now we're going off to China, because a Long March 3B with a YZ-1 upper stage launched from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center, and it launched on Wednesday, September 19th at 14:07 Coordinated Universal Time. It was carrying 2 Beidou navigation satellites, C33 and C34, as a part of China's effort to make its own global positioning system. And on board those Beidou satellites are Cospas Sarsat, which is actually a search and rescue radio beacon locator. Now, China is most certainly launched a lot this year, and it's pulling ahead of the United States for most launches this year. Of course, we still have a little bit of the year to go. Also, China has launched 13 Beidou satellites, over 7 launches just in this year alone. That's an incredibly fast build out for a satellite constellation in medium Earth orbit. And look at this footage we got to see. This was delivered almost immediately after the launch, which is, not only is this really rare footage to see from China, especially the upper stage and things going, but holy moly, it happened and it got out to public pretty quickly. And then just before the show, we had a Mitsubishi Heavy Industries H-2B rocket launching from the Tanegashima Space Center in Japan. And it launched today, as we said, at September 22nd at 17:52 Coordinated Universal Time. It was carrying Kanatori 7, also known as HTV-7. It's carrying 6,200 kilograms of supplies, including new lithium-ion batteries to upgrade the current nickel hydride batteries on the International Space Station. Also, a very cool experiment they're doing. They have a small capsule to try and see if they can recover 20 kilograms of materials and survive re-entry when it is disposed of. Now, this is going to be continuing upgrades of the International Space Station, and that small capsule being used to test the recovery method. They could eventually upscale that and actually crew rate it to carry an individual astronaut home. And so far, everything is looking good with it. And that is your launch minutes for this week.
I'm
So-
sweaty.
That was
really
insane.
good.
That was great.
You can breathe now. Yeah, I think he needs
Wow.
therapy now. I think that was a little traumatizing, but he did
That
great,
was
didn't he?
so
Bones?
good.
That was amazing. All right, now Sum up everything you just said in one sentence or less. I'm kidding.
Oh boy, I gotta say,
man, that was so good.
I gotta say that China launch, the Long March 3 with the Beidou satellites, that was just so cool because those were camera angles that are rare to near never seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, really seeing, especially seeing the second stage light up and the third stage go, and separation and payload fairing, like those are like we're used to seeing that with
Right.
U.S. and Russia launches and things like that, but holy moly, that was so cool to see that from China, and especially it was just like all of a sudden a couple hours after the launch, it was just like, hey, here's the footage.
Look
And
at
it's
what
just
do you
like,
have? Just
Wow.
so casually, like, by the way, check it out.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
cool. And you know,
So-
this is really kind of exciting stuff because, as you said, we were kind of in a bit of a launch drought. There wasn't a whole lot of action, and then all of a sudden, quite literally, bam, 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 bam.
Yes, and the cadence should pick up through the rest of the year, and that's going to be very interesting because of the total number of launches that everyone has done so far this year. Because China has done 25, while the United States is sitting at 24, and we know that there is a bet between Space Mike, Ben, and myself as
Yes,
to
lucrative.
who's going to do it. If I remember correctly, myself and Mike, we think China's going to win, and Ben thinks the United States is. Russia's got 10, Japan's got 5 now, Europe's got 4, India's got 4 now, and New Zealand has 1. Maybe they'll increase that to 2 by the end of the year. We'll have to see with that. So, holy moly, there's been a lot of launches this year.
lot of
I'm
launches.
glad you have the lung capacity to have covered all of them.
Yes,
That was
I am
so
too.
good.
So I'm definitely
Yeah.
needing to hit the gym after that for sure.
Absolutely. Well, that was your cardio for the day. So
Thanks.
as your personal trainer, who I just assigned myself as, you're good.
All right, I'm off to IHOP now.
Or IHOB, which is now it's the
Gosh.
International House of
That
Burgers.
stressed me out. Let's not talk about that. Be yourself. Evita, I
Yes.
understand that there is a planet that Gene Roddenberry predicted, and I would
Yes.
like to learn more about it because I love Star Trek.
Yes. So, oh man. Okay. So the full planet's actual name it's known as HD26965b.
Catchy.
I know, right?
Rolls right off the tongue.
So this is an artist rendition of it, and it is orbiting a star that's actually very similar to our own star. It's only about 4 billion years old. So that's actually really exciting, and it's found in the habitable zone.
Ooh.
So this is huge. It's an exoplanet, and they're looking to name it Vulcan because literally it's orbiting a star that's named 40 Eridani A. So for the Star Trek fans, you know that is, its reason it's called A is because it's part of a triple star system.
Triple?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of binary, but tertiary?
Yeah, well,
Right?
so in Star Trek.
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's
so
that takes Tatooine and it makes it look lame. Like, yo, you only have 2 stars?
we have 3.
I've got 3.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's just so cool. So he actually wrote a letter to Sky and Telescope magazine with 3 other scientists from the Harvard. It was from the Harvard Astrophysics Department, Center for Astrophysics, and actually said like, hey, this star that's been discovered. There likely is a planet that actually orbits that is most likely in the habitable zone and can potentially sustain life. So he actually wrote this letter like a long time ago. I think it was in 1991 is when he wrote the letter, and then obviously in Star Trek is when he ended up writing about it. And he ended up saying, this is Vulcan. It's tidally locked to its star. So yeah, he's a great picture of Spock. And oh man, it's so
handsome.
cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
so tell me more about this exoplanet. What's it like?
So it's considered to be a super Earth. So it's much larger than our own planet. It's much larger than Earth. So its gravity is a lot stronger, and it's tidally locked to its star. So meaning that half of it is completely facing the star, the other half is the dark side. And so they say that if there is some form of atmosphere that exists there, it's definitely really, really dry on one side. So it might potentially have caves and like mountainous type of terrain going on, which is very similar to the planet Vulcan. So this is what's really cool about it. And again, it's orbiting a star that's very similar to our sun. I mean, our sun's about 4.6 billion years old. And this star is about 4 billion years old. So the fact that it's in the habitable zone, there's a really good chance that there might actually be some form of atmosphere there. It's potential for there to actually be water that can actually exist, potentially
like
in
water.
liquid form. Yeah. So
How did
And what's I was going to say, what's cool about those tidally locked exoplanets is that the habitable zone on those exoplanets is usually right on the day-night boundary. Essentially, sunrise and sunset is right exactly where it's at. So how poetic
I love
it's
that.
able to do that. So life right where it begins.
Yeah,
So.
and yeah.
Actually, we have a question in the chat room.
Yes.
Astro YYZ. How was this planet discovered? What program? So yeah, I was about to ask you, Athena.
Sweet.
How'd we find this little guy?
So it actually was discovered through the Dharma, which is this next picture, the Dharma Endowment Foundation telescope. So it's a 50-inch telescope on Mount Lemmon in southern Arizona. So it was used with this telescope, and per usual, usually it's used to try and detect exoplanets. Usually it's through there's a bunch of different methods for trying to detect exoplanets, but it's really cool that this one was actually used. They were looking to about 16 light years away in the constellation Eridanus, and this is where they ended up finding it. So they had the telescopes pointed there. That's where they ended up finding it, and it's cool because we knew about this star for a while, but there was no signs just yet about there being any planets orbiting it. So now that there is, this is really cool. So right now they're trying to pitch the name to the IAU for it to be named Vulcan.
Nice.
So and so this is actually an image of the letter that Gene Roddenberry wrote in 1991 to Sky and Telescope magazine. So this is just so cool because look at how long ago this was, and this really goes to show just how much science fiction and science. As we all know, it really ties in hand to hand.
Heck
but
yes.
that just there's so much contribution that he had to the scientific community. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well,
so
I'm
excited.
all for naming it Vulcan then. I'm all for that.
Yes.
All right.
Same.
So speaking of things that happened a long time ago that one might forget, Jared.
I don't remember what
Okay,
I'm supposed
cool.
to be talking about.
Well, that's today's show.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's because there is a slight problem with Curiosity, Mars Science Laboratories rover, on the surface of Mars, which is that it is no longer storing data, and it's not returning stored data either on the surface of Mars. So they're having a little bit of a problem actually getting the science back from it.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So is Curiosity's communication completely cut off?
No,
or-
so it's not cut off.
Okay.
The orbiters are actually still picking up real-time data from Curiosity. And the cool thing is that if an experiment allows real-time data to be sent, we're still receiving the data from those experiments. But it's just a little bit of a weird problem that they're having with it.
Okay. So it seems like Curiosity is then taking a little break. When will it be able to resume working on Mars' surface?
Well, as you can imagine, the data that they're getting from Curiosity is pretty limited. So they've got to diagnose that problem. But they're expecting the resolution to take some time, but they're definitely going to be working on it with the engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And the science instruments that need their data stored, they've already commanded to turn those off.
Okay.
So that way they can see if it's some sort of complication between an instrument talking to the data storage incorrectly, and they'll just kind of figure it out from there.
Okay, and I think that kind of answers this question we have in the chat from Teen News off YouTube. So can the scientists still operate Curiosity then?
Yes and no. So you can definitely operate your instrument if you're getting real-time data from it, but if your instrument requires the data to be stored and then uplinked to a Mars orbiter and then sent to the Earth, no, you're not going to be able to do that.
Shucks.
So, and they're troubleshooting that. They're basically literally doing your IT work from 81.
It's like the Geek Squad, but
yeah,
cooler.
Geek Squad, but 81 million kilometers away.
A little bit more impressive. All right,
just
so
a bit.
all right then. So is there any other problems going on with Curiosity?
Well,
near
Curiosity,
to my heart.
It's also been having some problems with its drill. Because they developed a whole new technique because the drill actually kind of stopped working like it was supposed to. So they developed a new technique to operate the drill, and they started using it on rocks that ended up being too hard for Curiosity to actually drill into.
No.
So they're trying to find rocks around there now to do that. But overall, Curiosity has a clean bill of health and it's operating as it should be. It's just not remembering things like it's supposed to.
Nice. And actually, Destructor 1701 asks a really good question. Doesn't MSL have backup hard drives?
Yes, it does, but you don't want to switch to that. You want to stay with your primary as long as you can, and you want to troubleshoot your primary as well, because you have backups on board, but you don't want to switch over to them and start taxing them when you may need them later on during your mission. So
Very good point. All right. Well, thank you for that update. I mean, Curiosity, again, probably... It's always been one of my most favorite missions, and it's doing so much amazing work. But as somebody else actually pointed out in the chat, a lot of times these are just the types of issues that we run into when it comes to, I mean, you're operating a lab on
Yeah.
a different planet. Of course, these things are going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I guess somebody should just go to Mars.
I
and
mean,
get
can
it.
we just
pull the
send
RTG off and then
just
plug it back
sounds
in?
more
So-
efficient and logical. I don't know why you're
Yeah.
not doing that. Jeez. I should run the
Simple
program.
solution.
Apparently.
Yeah.
All right. So
I love it.
apparently, speaking of really cool technology, there is a giant net that's going to be catching a CubeSat.
It caught the CubeSat.
This is so
Caught the
cool.
A giant net caught the CubeSat.
It's like jellyfishing.
It
but
looked
with
like a
CubeSats.
cobweb. Yeah, it looked
gosh.
like a cobweb in the video. So this is actually a big reason why this is so important is because so much of low Earth orbit is just filled with space junk. Like about 95% of what's up there is actually space junk.
Yes.
It's pieces that it broke off of like early Soyuz missions. Like, I mean, there's so much.
Dead satellites.
Dead satellites.
Rocket boosters that
Yeah.
have been spent. So
So
yeah.
it's kind of like a graveyard of just old stuff.
Exactly. So this is why it's
Hoarders.
super important.
Garbage.
Yeah. Because
Garbage.
also the thing is a lot of it, might seem kind of like it's garbage, you should throw it out, but a lot of it can actually be potentially reused. I mean, I know radiation causes a lot of problems, a lot of the paint's going to be faded off, but with any machine, you can take it apart and try and find other ways to reuse it. So this is something I'm really excited about that we're working on, and so this was actually part of. Europe's remove debris mission, and this is really cool. So on September 16th is when this was deployed. So up at the ISS, there was a CubeSat that deployed from the ISS, and then it deployed this net, and the net shot out into space. It's like the coolest thing. I realized I had processed the video and I did put it in the drive, but I didn't actually attach it to my script. So sorry about that, guys. I will share it later with you all. But it's really
looked like
it's
this. It
amazing.
was like,
We'll
That's
act it out
accurate.
for
So,
you.
yeah.
But you have the CubeSat,
I'll be
and
the
then you have
CubeSat.
this net. Yeah, you be the CubeSat. And so this net comes, but it actually ended up grabbing it. And what it does is it then deorbits it, and it's on its way now coming back to Earth. Yeah, exactly.
Just like that.
Just like
exactly
that.
like
With the
that.
wiggles and everything.
And it's so great. So there's different things that you can do with this. The one thing that they're doing right now is to purposely deorbit it. You want to either get it into a different area or try and maybe not send it out into space, but you really want to try and bring that back down to Earth because, like I said, you could try and repurpose it, reuse it. Oh, here's a great animation. So
There we go.
thank you so much, Dada. So this is where the CubeSat's deploying from the satellite itself, from the ISS, and then you're going to see as it's moving. The next thing that's going to come out, this right here is actually going to be part of something they're looking to do. So this is the net. Okay, so you can see it captures, and then it slowly starts to pull it out of its orbit, and then eventually it's going to be bringing it down to Earth, which is really, really cool. Something else also that I thought was really fascinating about this, again, there's a great image of the ISS, is
There it goes.
it's about the size of a refrigerator, the spacecraft.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually built by the satellite manufacturer Surrey Satellite Technology, also known as SSTL
Represent.
for acronyms.
Represent.
Yeah, and it's actually in conjunction with not only the University of Surrey, but also Airbus and other European companies. And it's so cool because what it ends up doing is it deploys this 1 meter wide inflatable structure, which is what the net is, and it actually increases in size to match the size of whatever the target is.
Oh.
So yeah, so
that
it actually
actually
can stretch depending on what there is. That a question in the chat?
Yeah, I was going to say,
Amazing.
Ruben Byte off YouTube actually asked, would it be possible to catch way bigger objects this way?
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
there's the footage.
Yeah, so this is the actual footage. This is legit. This is real.
my
This is
gosh.
what happened. Look at it. Looked like
This
a
is
cobweb, and
like
then it wraps
space
around it.
cowboys lassoing
Yes.
and taken down.
And I think what's really interesting about that is you'll notice that during deployment, when they're making the satellite bigger, it really starts to spin up.
Yes.
It really rotates around an axis really
My
fast.
Which is why I feel like it's like a cobweb where it
Yeah.
wraps around like a dead fly or
The
killing
net
a
then
fly.
grabs it and it bleeds off the momentum into the net and it
so
stops it from
cool.
rotating, which is really, really neat.
Oh man!
So,
And
physics.
Physics. This also really fun fact. This is the biggest satellite. The largest satellite that released from the ISS. This came in at around 100 kilos, so kilograms. 100 kilograms. So this was the
Wow.
biggest satellite ever that launched out of the ISS, which is super cool. And what they're looking to do in the future is also a harpoon test and a drag test. And I believe we might also have footage of that. And it's really cool. And this is very important because like there's other ways to actually deorbit or try and clean up, space. And so one of them is through like a harpoon, which is going to come out and it can like try and drag it and grab it and put it into a different orbit, or also the drag, which is really cool, the drag test. So, I mean, this is just so important because like there's so much space junk up there, and with the amount of launches that we're having, we got for future humanity.
Exactly. And with the increased frequency of people bringing stuff up, we really need to start thinking of some sort of contingency plan, like how are we going to clean up after ourselves, because we don't want it to be too late and then potentially run into a hazard and be like, well, we should have cleaned up before we ran into a hazard.
Exactly, yeah, because one of these pieces can run into something else in space, totally damage something, or if we're, whatever, like if
somebody
we're living up there,
someone
can get a boo-boo.
And Nikit Dalal from YouTube actually asks, will the CubeSat survive re-entry to Earth? So what's going to happen to this little...
Yes, so from what I was researching, the goal is to try and have it be able to survive impact so that it potentially can be reused. Any of its parts can be reused. And again, there is some damage to it just from being out in space, as a lot of you guys probably know, again, from radiation and everything. Yeah. But yeah, the goal is to try and bring them back down to Earth so they're not completely discarded, so that they can be reused.
Yeah. Nice. There's a lot to go into that, though, because you're re-entering at 8 kilometers per second. That's a lot of heat.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Figure out how to do that with. So
8 kilometers per second.
I mean, if you can't stand the heat, stay out of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
All right, and
you're not wrong. So.
Well, thank you guys so much for, I'm all fired up about the great job on the launch minutes.
Thanks.
Thank you for letting me know about Vulcan.
Oh, yeah.
And before we head on to the next segment of the show, I have a personal thank you to give to our Escape Velocity citizens. These lovely folks literally make the show happen. Thank you so much for supporting us. And you too, watching at home or in your car, wherever you are, you can help support the show as well. You can subscribe and ring that cute little bell because you love us. Or you can head on over to patreon.com/TMRO and you too can see your name in small white print on the screen. Thank you so much for joining us for news, and we're going to go ahead and take a really quick break, so go ahead and just stay right there where you are, and then when we come back, we are going to go ahead and shoot it over to Lisa.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled on some expectation, this girl's a fascination, and nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving, through the heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
And thanks for sticking with us. Now, we're going to have an amazing panel of experts here, and we're going to talk about how all of us can experience what it's like to go to the moon. It's part of a new project that was announced this week called the DearMoon project. Before we get into that, I want to introduce you to my panel. Now, usually I would give an introduction for all of you guys, but I want to mix it up today. And what I want you guys to do is to tell us your name and give me a 30-second elevator pitch of what you're working on at the moment. So we're going to start from the left and work through that way. So Tim.
Well, hi, I'm Tim Dodd, but I'm better known as the Everyday Astronaut. What do I work? I produce educational content on YouTube, mostly about rockets and rocket science, but I'm an artist at heart, and Everyday Astronaut started off as an art project of a man-child gallivanting around the world in a spacesuit for some reason. And yeah, I created these whimsical photos, and that's kind of how my career started as a science communicator. So yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Nicole?
Nicole Stott here. Got the handle these days, the artistic astronaut, because I had the opportunity to paint while I was in space, which was really very cool with the watercolors up there. And since retiring from the astronaut office about 3 years ago, I've been working to share that spaceflight experience in as many ways possible, including through my artwork. And as a result, I've had the opportunity to participate in projects like the Spacesuit Art Project, which has kids from all over the world in cancer centers making art, and then our spacesuit companies creating spacesuits out of that artwork, some of which have gone to and from the space station. And a number of other projects that are space-themed, really art and healing programs. And yeah, just trying to bring what we do in space back down here to Earth.
Awesome, thank you. Niamh?
Yeah, so my name is Niamh Shaw, pronounced as it's spelt, obviously. Not. It's an Irish name. We love mixing it up in Ireland, confusing you. So I started out as an engineer and picked up performing about 18 years ago. And then for the last 10 years, I've been combining the two, because I think we're all a mix of lots of different specialities. And my passion is space, so everything I make kind of has a space theme. And I'm equally, the work that I make is about igniting people's own curiosity as much as telling stories about space, because I think there's a lot of people out there who have a bad relationship with science or space. Somewhere along the way, they forgot that we're all naturally curious. So whether it's theatre or whether I'm making events for the public or whether I'm making, video pieces, everything is ultimately about telling the human story of science and space to bring as many people towards it. And also as an artist, since 2011, I have been devoting the rest of my life to actually getting to space. Just see what happens when a woman in her 40s from Ireland, where they have no space agency and absolutely no human space program, what happens when you give that out to the world?
Thanks, Niamh.
That's it. Yeah.
And Emory?
My name is Emory Stagmer. I have actually been involved with TMRO, originally Space Vidcast, for almost 9 years. I'm an avionics and satellite flight software engineer by trade. That's what I do as my day job. But I also run a recording studio called Untied Music Studio, and I have done a number of rocket launch recordings for TMRO, and they're either available on my YouTube channel, which is Untied Music Studios, or on the TMRO channel. So I have a passion for going out and talking to students and being able to relay to them the kind of the wonder and excitement of building the technology that allows people to go out either remotely with robots or in person, like Nicole, and be able to go out and experience the wonder of space and the wonder of discovery of both our planet and the rest of the universe, us being one very, very small part of a much bigger world.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. We're all here today to talk about the DearMoon project. And the DearMoon project, if you missed the announcement, Elon Musk and SpaceX last Monday actually talked about the first private passenger that will be traveling on the big Falcon rocket. Emery and Tim, you guys were both there.
Could you we got to be there. It was really great.
Could you give us a little bit of a kind of highlight about the DearMoon project and kind of, in a nutshell, what's happening? What's SpaceX actually doing?
Yeah. Basically, the public found out a little hint to this a year and a half ago, February 27th of last year. I remember that because it was my birthday. All of a sudden, we got this press release from SpaceX saying, hey, we signed someone to go around the moon. A private citizen or a private person is paid to go on a lunar trip, just a quick little loop around the moon. And I remember that being very like, whoa, that's crazy. They originally planned to do it on a Falcon Heavy with their Crew Dragon capsule. And then we find out later that at the launch of Falcon Heavy, Elon mentioned that they are not human rating the Falcon Heavy vehicle, and that they were now looking to take that same passenger on their next generation rocket, the BFR, the big Falcon rocket. And so
who was the passenger? So
we found out finally after a year and a half of waiting that it was this gentleman named Yusaka Mizawa. That's probably way off, or MZ. He self-introduced himself, and he's a Japanese billionaire, musician, artist, art collector, and designer of especially clothing and things. So he's just this awesome guy that's extremely passionate about art and wants to literally just send artists with him around the moon. I believe
6 to 8 is what he said to take with him, which is interesting on a vehicle that's kind of designed to host 100
people.
So you kind of have to ask, who else is going? I would assume that there's going to be crew as well as the artists who will be, at least partially crewing the vehicle, but also largely be passengers.
Yeah.
So I assume that there's going to be people up there flying it as well. I understand from Twitter that Chris Hadfield and
And Steve Kelly, or Scott Kelly.
Scott Kelly have both expressed an interest, and I know that there's at least one astronaut, Garrett Reisman, on staff at SpaceX. So yeah, I mean, they're going to need a couple of people probably to run a vehicle that big, and so the artists don't have to be required to
Have
do
all the
that.
training.
Yeah, and do all the training, because you want them to do what it is that they do. It takes everybody to do these kinds of things, right? It takes professional astronauts and it takes artists. If you're going to go out there and do public outreach, then the people who are up there to do public outreach shouldn't be spending all of their time, at least. They may want to spend some time interacting with the vehicle and being part of that crew, really, but it's an interesting dichotomy where you have to talk about both crew and passengers,
Right.
because that's not something we've ever really had to do before.
So we have Yusaku Miyazawa taking not just himself, but he's offered 6 to 8 artists to go with him around the moon. And we haven't sent people to the moon since 1972?
72.
So I was super excited when I heard this announcement, but what about all of you? What was going through your minds when you heard this announcement, when you realized that we're actually doing this, we're actually sending people back to the moon, and not just people, but artists? Let's start with Niamh and then Nicole.
Well, I was really glad to hear it because whether it happens or not, what happens is that the conversation begins. So a lot of the time when I kind of tell people about what I want to do, or about trying to get to space, they always assume that I'm talking about being an astronaut. And I don't think I ever have, I don't have the skills to be an astronaut. So you have to keep kind of defining what that is. So immediately I went, well, that's brilliant, because you're now opening up a new conversation. It's great. I guess what I was thinking immediately was, I hope he doesn't bring, the big names in art, because it would be nice for people who have a genuine passion for space to have an opportunity to take their work to the next level. So I was immediately thinking that, people probably like will.i.am and really famous and well-established artists are going to be invited to go. So I'm not sure, what the criteria is. So immediately my first thing was like, oh, brilliant. This is really going to help define the difference between what artists are trying to do about space and people applying to be astronauts. And secondly, who's on the list, And I was like, I want to go, but I'm not sure if that's how he or MZ is thinking it, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess. That were my thoughts.
Cool. Nicole?
Yeah. I mean, it was really exciting to see it, I think. And like Niamh, I think the first reaction for me was, as a person who really believes that most of us have this blend of art and science, or art and tech, or art and whatever the heck else you want to say is mixed in there. I think there's a mix of creativity in all of us. So as an astronaut who considers herself an artist as well, I just like the idea that we're bringing this blend of art and space together in a really big way. I mean, if this gets pulled off, it's a really big way. And as a person too who believes our next destination should be the moon, en route to other places as well, the audiences that something like this, even the conversation about it, like Niamh says, even the conversation will bring in audiences that aren't even thinking about space right now, aren't thinking about what we're doing every day on the space station that's about improving life here on Earth, not thinking about why we talk about going back to the moon, which ultimately is about improving life here on Earth, and not talking about it as that next step for going to Mars, which I still like to believe is ultimately about improving life here on Earth. And art, the people you have on this panel today, I think understand that art is it's just this universal communicator that can reach audiences that aren't thinking about these kinds of things. And this is the kind of thing that I think opens that up. Like Niamh said too, if this never happens, which I hope it does, maybe it doesn't happen in 2023, I don't know. A lot of stuff has to go on to really make that possible. you know, maybe like Emory said, you know, who are the other people that are going to be on this spacecraft? You know, the idea of sending 8 artists on their own to loop around the moon,
Right.
you know, that's a little spooky, freaky to me, but but I think it's bigger than that. And or my hope would be that there's kind of a surrounding plan associated with other people, crew, other folks on board as well, and just that it's an experience that will, you know, start a global conversation.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I think that's super important that is inspiring people to start talking about this. Emory, what was your first reaction?
It was a little amazing to me that MZ is buying the entire flight. He's not buying a seat, right? He's buying the whole flight. And originally, as I heard the announcement, my impression was that he was buying a seat for himself, but he wasn't actually. That was not the case. But like I said, that was just my impression. But being able to see the broader idea of he's buying the whole flight. He's an entrepreneur from Japan. Yes, he's a billionaire, but he's not a 100 billionaire. I mean, he's not. There are a significant number of people on this planet who have the same kind of resources that he has. So for him to say, "I'm buying a whole flight," I think kicks the door open to a lot of people being able to say, you know, not me, but I'm not a billionaire.
Not yet.
But that would be great, but not likely. But anyhow, for everybody to say, you know, why is he doing this? Why is it important to him? Why might it be important to me? You know, maybe there's people who, you know, have that kind of money who could say, okay, he's an artist. He wants to go out and communicate to the world through art. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to go out and try and figure out how I can make money doing this. Or I want to go and look and see what materials are out there so that we could potentially mine the moon, or whatever it is that, you know, it is that you do, right? To actually say, oh, I could do this. This is something that we could either, however you perceive it, you know, giving money to a thing and doing it as an outreach. Which doesn't have a necessarily commercially viable return on investment, you know, business case, right? But I think business cases can be made. So, as just the surprise to me that he was basically buying the whole launch was a little bit of an eye opener, and it sounds like to me that this may be one of the very first, at least very early on in the BFR flight campaign. So it's going to grab people's attention. I tend to follow astronauts and satellites and technical people on Twitter, and so my Twitter feed tends to be a little bit of an echo room. But the response there was universally positive. So that kind of a conversation, I think, is really really exciting.
Awesome. And Tim?
Anyone that knows me, I think knows that, like, I'm obsessed with hardware. I love, like, the actual, you know, the stuff that gets us out there to explore. You know, to me, that's almost what I get most excited about. Is this? It's a form of art to me. The engineering, seeing the flight hardware to me, and the, you know, the people that sit there and crunch the numbers and do all the things, and the vision of you know, the people that figure this stuff out, the scientists. That's typically what gets my attention. So when I was there at the event, I'm sitting there going, like, I want all the things of the BFR. I want to know everything. Tell me everything. I still want that. But my brain went completely, I've never had my brain go so silent, and I was just in absolute awe when he was describing his vision, when MZ was describing it. And I had shivers, like the insides of me, just like a chord had struck. You know, I was just like, this is the most beautiful sentiment. Like, this is, not to ruin that statement, but like Willy Wonka-esque, you know, like where he gives the golden ticket, and it's this like whole potential huge experience for humanity that is like the most beautiful, and his passion behind it was just, I had a little tear in my eye. I'm just sitting there, and this is coming from someone, trust me, I've said this a million times, I'm like terrified of spaceflight. I am not someone that wants to go around the moon. but thinking about people that are artists that are not, not the normal, like, I'm a test pilot. I'm going to go out and fly this thing with my bare hands and do the scary space exploration, to be able to express themselves around the moon, seeing things that only 24 humans have ever seen before. Opening that up to communicators, to me, is just like that could be absolutely game changing, like one of the biggest pinnacle moments in human history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it there. So going back to what you kind of said about Willy Wonka, we don't really know how this golden ticket artist selection process is going to go. We don't know who's going to get chosen. We don't know how. But what we do know, MZ did tell us that he wanted a range of different artists to go. So whether that's painters, sculptors, dancers, singers. So I have a question here from the chat room from Hannes Vorwerk on Twitch that asks, what do you think about the wide range of types of artists that are being considered? And to add on to that, do you think it's best that a wide range of artists go, or do you think it should be narrowed down? How do you think that kind of process should work for this artist selection? So if anyone has any burning ideas on that topic.
I don't know how they will do that, but I can tell you that some of the artists I follow, like on YouTube or on Twitter, one musician in particular that I follow on YouTube, he's already put up a passionate video that he wants to go, and I think he would be a great.
Is it Winter Garden?
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah. Martin from the band Winter Garden. He's very technical. He builds his own electronic and mechanical instruments to play on stage. He's a brilliant musician, and he's a great communicator. He would be a good choice. But how do how does his name get in front of MZ, or how does Niamh, you want to go. Well, how do we get, how does that selection happen? Does he pick well-known names? Does Taylor Swift get the golden ticket because she's so well known and may actually be a really excellent choice? Sarah Brightman was going to go up on a Soyuz, and unfortunately that fell apart. But do you pick people who've already shown an interest? Does he just pick people who are his friends? Does he just pick? It's difficult. It really is a golden ticket, maybe a platinum ticket. It's to be able to do that. It's.
I think what I'd like to see is I like exactly what you said, Emory. I'd like to see people who have the capacity to make a very far reach. We are all space nuts. But it's like what Nicole said as well. It would be great to kind of attract people who have no relationship with space, and suddenly there to be a light shine on it. So on one way, somebody like Taylor Swift would be perfect because she has such a new following that is outside the space spectrum. So I don't know how he's going to choose them. I mean, he says he wants to, he would love to come up with a solution for, to create world peace. So maybe it could be based on that. He is a collector of high art, so he could also then, possibly sort of attract people. Like he seems to have a penchant for, Busca, who was an artist from the 80s, as far as I know, from New York, and that's a kind of a very avant-garde art scene. That would attract a completely different audience. But my vote would be, like what you say, I think the most effective communicators who have a passion and who would be well enough established that their message would have a far enough reach. Because ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, isn't it? We're trying to engage the whole world. Because the lovely thing about when you go to the moon is that you have that beautiful view of the Earth from a distance. So that's the whole world population. That's 7 billion people right there. I don't know. I mean, is it going to be a golden ticket, or is it, just like a list that he already has? That was the second, like I said earlier, that was the second thought that came into my head when I heard about it.
Yeah. There was a great quote from one of the Apollo astronauts, I believe it was, we went to the moon and we discovered the Earth, right?
Earth,
or something like that.
Nicole?
And that's, this year for them to announce this flight this year, I think is really interesting too, in that, this is our 50th anniversary year of Apollo 8 and the iconic Earthrise image, the first time human eyes saw Earth rising above, the horizon of the moon. And we could spend, I think, the whole session here and more, just talking about the impact of that image on the people who, all of us that weren't even there, you know?
Yeah.
And when I think about this kind of flight and artists, and I mean, I don't know how they're going to choose this. I don't know, you know, is it going to be all sculptors or, you know, musicians and everything? I mean, I would like to see a blend, but in the end, I think it comes back to what are they really planning to communicate? Or maybe what are they going to be surprised by that they want to share and communicate? But I really think, like you guys have said, I think it will come back to this totally new perspective of seeing Earth from that vantage point. You know, the moon is going to be this wonderful thing to experience, but I think the interaction between the moon and the Earth is what really is going to surprise and inspire the artwork that comes from it. And I look at it just like any mission we've ever done. You know, with people or without, you know, we send Cassini out to Saturn and we love all these images of Saturn, but what is the one picture we're really looking for? We're looking for that dot of light between the rings of Saturn, where we make that connection back to ourselves. You know, the same thing with Horizon and Juno. I mean, all of it are, you know, our rovers on Mars that, you know, we were talking about Curiosity earlier, and that picture that was taken of, you know, the horizon off the surface of Mars, that there's that dot of light that's Earth. And I think that connection, that human connection, that we are all Earthlings thing, is what has the greatest opportunity to come from this communication, from that vantage point, and through the artistry of whichever artist we choose to send there.
There's a beautiful question that leads directly into that, Nicole, that comes from our chat room. Hanny's Warweb on Twitch asks, what would the art created have to do to act as an enduring ambassador to humanity for space, instead of just being like a short-term interesting thing that happened?
Wait, hang on, what would I created to do that?
What is it, to make the art long-lasting and can really connect with people, what does it need to embody rather than just being, oh cool, I went around the moon and I painted a picture? How does it speak to you?
Okay, so when we look at human history, the things that stand out, you know, like the pyramids, things that literally physically last forever, like actually forever, you know, as far as we're concerned, at least. You know, and you can look at all these big things, you know, in our history books of these check, 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 check. And rarely has something that's actually been considered art been defined in a history book, you know. I mean, maybe like the Eiffel Tower, you know, or like something like that would kind of be a moment in time that an artist defined, and that was their art project, will ever go down in history. And then, but you look at like things that are in history that are artistic, you know, again, like, you know, Apollo 8, you know, moon or Earthrise for the first time is one of the most poetic and beautiful things ever, you know. And to me, Falcon Heavy, seeing an ordinary car that is meant to exist on Earth with a mannequin that can represent a normal, everyday person, leaving Earth, seeing Earth in the background with this car that's meant to be terrestrial in space. Like, it was another one of those, that's art to me. That was artistic. That's beautiful. And to me, this could be taking all, that could make that stuff look like going to Chuck E. Cheese as far as art. You know what I mean? A finger painting. Like, that's, this could potentially be one of the most defining human moments that is entirely based around and solely built around art. You know, that's its intention, and that could be huge. Like, just, I don't think we know what that means, and I don't think we can even define, you know, what it needs to be and what kind of medium it needs to be. I don't think we have any sense, because we've never had anything this big. I guess that's just my opinion. I don't even know. I don't know how we say, like, well, it needs to be a sculpture because it will physically maintain its physique for 1,000 years, or it needs to be a painting so it doesn't, you know, I don't think we have
Or a piece of music.
A piece of music.
Right.
I mean, yeah, we still listen to music. Some of the most beautiful music was written
hundreds of years
ago.
Yeah,
so it's I don't think we can define that yet, and that's kind of the beauty of it.
One of my philosophical things. Go ahead, Nicole.
Just really quickly, the only thing I was going to say is that, you know, from the historical standpoint on it, maybe something really significant in this is not even really the medium that it is presented in, but, you know, this will be a flight, you know, a couple days for these people, you know, looping around the moon and coming home. I'd like to think that they then are on a mission beyond that. You know, it wasn't, ooh, I got to go loop around the moon and I painted this thing, or I sculpted this thing, or I wrote this music. It's, what is their mission beyond that? How are they going to continue use that experience? It's kind of this life-changing thing that I have to believe it will be. And everything they do artistically from that point is somehow inspired by it and brings in, broader audiences to experience it, and this reality of who and where we are on this planet. And that might actually help lead to that world peace thing that he talked about as part of the, the goal of the mission.
Yeah, I think MZ even talked about that. He didn't necessarily intend for people to just make art while they're on the ship. He meant it to be when they get home, and use that to inspire them for the rest of their career potentially.
I mean, I'd like to see the kind of person I'd like to see go. One of the things I'd like to see is I'd like to see a sketch artist, somebody who can quickly capture the feelings and the intensity of in the moment of the other people who are there and the things that they're seeing and how they're reacting to them. That would be, you could do that with a photographer as well, but I'd love to see somebody who is, that's kind of like somebody who can, has a real gift for capturing evocative kind of images. That's but that's the kind of art that would last for a very long time, and something I think somebody could do with a sketch pad and a pencil.
Niamh?
I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Well, for me, all good art makes me feel differently about something. It makes me experience something differently for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? Like, so these moments where you see something one way, and then when you see a good piece of art, whether it's a piece of music or it's something you read or it's something you saw or something you felt, from that moment on, you perceive it differently. And I think that's what Earthrise did. And so we're looking for another moment like that for the whole world. And it's like what you said, I don't think it's about the medium, it's about how do we get that visceral change to happen for people. And the lovely thing, I guess, why he wants different artists is that we all have our preference for what moves us. Some of us it's imagery, some of us it's sound, some of us it's like high art or whatever. So I think by having a range of artists, we have a better chance for that. Because we are at a phase in our lives where we kind of do need to sort of see the world differently. It's a lot of kind of what I've been thinking about, like sending up civilians into space in the first place. It's like, can we get the average Joe to see Earth differently if they experience it through the eyes of somebody that they feel they know or that they trust? And the space industry is brilliant, but it's only attracting people that are already engaged in space. So what's fantastic about this is it's an opportunity for suddenly people who connect with like somebody like Taylor Swift or something, and not necessarily her, but somebody who has that kind of following and that capacity to communicate in a way that will basically give us a slap on the face like a big fat fish. That's essentially what we really need to do. And whether that person devotes the rest of their life to finding that in their work and finally getting it or not, that's what can happen when we dream impossible things and we put ordinary people in extraordinary places. We can actually then make something extraordinary happen and hopefully get the whole world to understand how important it is for us to protect our own vulnerable planet. That's ultimately what I think he's trying to do. And I think we all understand that because we're all so passionate about space. Ultimately we all want everybody to see that image as well.
I have to say, you brought up a really good point, Niamh, that can you imagine, he's even talked about communicators or, influencers, like as we think of them today socially. Can you imagine, I don't know if you're familiar with Casey Neistat. He's one of the most, he just records every aspect of his life, and you see his life on his face, he wears his life on his sleeve, literally. I mean, he is the most communicative of his life of anyone I know currently on planet Earth. And for better or worse, some people might not care about that, but can you imagine if he records his experience as he has to grasp the fact that his body's going to be flung around the moon, leaving Earth at, 22,000 miles an hour. Can you imagine his reaction as that all sinks in, his audience's connection to him as he realizes the grasp and the grandeur of what he's about to experience. And as he goes on that experience, sharing that with his audience would just be, I think it would connect with a way that has never happened before. You know, and of course the Apollo astronauts had their lives really well documented leading up to their missions, but it was through the lens of almost you know, what do you want to say that you know, like propaganda, really, you know, is through that lens of American propaganda, America, you know. Can you imagine if it was unadulterated in the actual real life experiences and realizing this is what I'm going to be experiencing, like unfiltered? I just can't even imagine that human experience, you know.
And much more raw.
But how do we reach Africa? How do we reach Asia? How do we reach, you know, like, we all have a following, but the big thing is how can somebody, like an artist, capture an image or a piece of sculpture in such a way that regardless of language, of culture, of country, or of having an existing space program, how can we get them to see an image that makes them go, oh my gosh, Earthrise did that? And I think that's really what would be amazing if we could achieve that.
Wow. So you guys have convinced me that this project is amazing, but there are still some people out there that have those, you know, those usual arguments against spaceflight that, you know, it's so much money, what do we get out of it? Shouldn't we spend this money somewhere else? There's a question in the chat room from Trebles who asks, are we overhyping this moon art? We've all seen photos and moon art. Wouldn't Mars be a better and bigger target for a group of artists to see Earth from Mars for the first time? And I want to expand that question to, what do we say to all those people who are like, this is just a waste of money? Like, how do you convince the people who aren't convinced about this project quite yet?
Should we just go in order? I think we all have probably pretty good thoughts on that. Really quickly, I'll just say that, you know, again, 24 humans, I believe it's 27 people on missions, but repeated people on Apollo, I believe it's 24 humans, went out to the moon and experienced that. All of them were test pilots, one was a scientist, and one became an artist kind of after Alan Bean, you know. We've already sent, people are sitting there going like, why not, you know, think about all the scientific stuff you could do on that. What a waste of our resources. Like, what can this free return trajectory lunar mission teach us scientifically that we don't already know, compared to what could we potentially experience with sending, you know, communicators in whatever medium out there? It'll be new, it'll be different. It's not just the same, well, now we know a little bit more about the gravity of this particular, or whatever, you know, the radiation environment here. You know, like, we've done that. We have probes for that. Send humans now.
We have probes for that.
Yep.
That's a really good point. So the probes are really good at returning the data, right? Humans are going to be the right kind of thing to send out to get the experience.
The emotion.
The emotion, the experience, the you know, robots can't put together blended thought where you say, I'm experiencing this in a very technical manner of, you know, the orbital mechanics and those kinds of things, but what does it make me feel? You have to have both in order to really engage the public. And I think it's interesting that, you know, it's going to take an extraordinary amount of technology in order to enable this kind of art. That's really kind of an interesting, you can't have a little bit of one and a little bit of the other, you got to have a lot of both. So the balance there between, you know, some of the most extreme technology humans have ever designed and built is going to be enabling some of the most amazing art that humans have ever done and shared with the rest of the world. So it's an interesting enabling technology.
And the technology is important too. We did learn a little bit more about the BFR architecture in general from this presentation, and Vax and Tim, we might keep you guys on in After Dark if you want to go over the technical details that we learned. So we will get to that a little bit later if you stick around. But Niamh and Nicole, final thoughts on what to say to the naysayers?
Well, the reason why I think the moon is good is no matter what civilization you look back through history, they've always had some sort of relationship with the moon. A lot of them have adored it. A lot of them have had customs around it. It has a huge impact on us on a daily basis with tides and so forth. So I think it is a good idea to go to the moon because of that, because no matter where you are in the world, we can all see the moon. For as long as we can remember, we have always seen the world through human eyes, and it was really only with the advances in technology that we realized that the sun didn't orbit around us, that we were the only star, that we were the only galaxy, that we were the only solar system. With increasing technology, we have to keep adjusting our perception of ourselves as humans and our relevance in the universe. So when you put a human into space, you bring humans with you. And every time we go into space, it is an absolute, we are defining who we are as a species every time we leave this planet. I always say it's like asking a little ant to drive a Formula One car around. You pick some sort of race. It's not what we were born to be. And yet when we work together collectively as a species, we can create anything. So having that intention with a bunch of people who have talents in communicating that message in a clear and coherent way, and in a way that moves us and might even change our perception of ourselves, will be transcendent. We have a tendency to think in kind of groups and clusters and countries and regions and factions. So what we're ultimately trying to do is find a way to communicate that we are a species. So exposing our vulnerability as humans in space is a big part of that, and artists are skilled at sharing themselves and their vulnerability in whatever their art form is. So it's important, and we're at a stage in our existence that we need a paradigm shift in our perception again. We had one with the Renaissance when artists and scientists worked together. And the other reason why artists should be going is that artists can also inspire science and technology as much as they are inspired by science and technology. So it also legitimizes the role of artists in space travel into the future. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer, having come from a technology and a creative mindset. So let's do it.
Nicole,
well, I think the first thing, I would like to say ditto to what all of you have said. I would also add that, anytime I hear that the argument about too much money spent, all these kinds of things, we could spend all day talking about this too, but bottom line is, it's not like that money's being spent in space. Whoops, sorry, I think that's the dog. It's being spent right down here on Earth. And hang on a sec, sorry. That. And animals. And the other thing is, we get to the most promising solutions. We do the most complex things when we trust in our imagination. And you look at the architects and the storytellers who actually pave the way for us to be launching ourselves, thrusting ourselves on a launch pad, hurling ourselves into space, whether we're going to the moon and walking there or, living and working on a space station. That's pretty impressive stuff. And it started with a storyteller, started with somebody imagining it. And I can only imagine what these people who will experience this journey around the moon will imagine as a result of it, and will share with us through their artwork. And then we can all start the brains churning on what do we do with it. And it is about us as Earthlings. It's about us recognizing ourselves as this, this humanity here on this planet that needs to work together and acknowledge that we are already all in space on a spaceship and need to start acting like crew. And I think seeing it from that vantage point, thank you, Bucky Fuller, because, who imagined this for us too, how many years ago? And I can tell you, when you see it, you feel it. I didn't just look through the window of the space station and take pictures and, remember it as a visual experience. And I remember it like it's part of me now. And I think that we don't necessarily have to go there to feel that way. And it's these kinds of things. It's the artwork of other people. It's the experiences of people. It's the visuals that we can get so well. It's Tim in his orange suit acting like the man-child that he describes himself as, that awakens our curiosity, inspires our imagination, and leads us to do the really complex things that we know are bigger and better than ourselves.
I hate to hijack the show, but I have to ask Nicole a question.
Yeah, okay, go for it.
Okay, Nicole, probably the best human of the 7 billion humans to help us really, understand an astronaut artist, artists that are astronaut. You are the one here. With your you guys need to understand, she's been in space 5 times on 5 different missions, spent over 100 days in space. And you have to work a lot. You work 40, 50 hours, and you have to exercise for 2 hours a day. I mean, if you had the opportunity, would you have wanted to sit there and just do art all day? Was that what was in you? What would have happened if you could have just done art all day? Would other people want to do art, in space instead of working? Just give me that perspective of, what if you were just there to focus on art and had no other job?
Yeah, I think that I would have done more than one painting for sure.
Or maybe not.
I can tell you, I think, and there's certainly no shortage of inspiration. You are surprised every time you look out the window. Sadly, well, I guess maybe it's not sadly, it's just part of the experience, or the adventure. You can't sit at the window and paint because what you wanted to paint is gone before you can get the brush to the paper. But the inspiration is certainly there. I think just as artists in our lives down here on Earth, we're not spending 24 hours a day painting or writing music. I mean, it becomes a very core part of it. But there are those other aspects of life that blend in as well. And I think that would happen in space too. You live in your house, you have to maintain it some part of the time. You have to cook and you have to exercise and all those things would happen. But you certainly could spend a serious amount of time at your art as your craft. I mean, that to me, that's a lot. It's your life, your job, if that's what you're what you've chosen when you go there. It would be wonderful to have more time for that. I can tell you most astronauts, well, probably all astronauts, if you have free time, you are in front of that window. And whether you're painting or thinking about a painting or not, you are capturing something in your brain that is about the imagination and creativity. You're taking pictures. Some or astronauts who never even consider themselves to be photographers become one because they are so inspired by what they're seeing and they want to make sure they capture it for themselves and their family and everybody else around them. And there's opportunity for art to be a primary role for somebody up there.
Yeah.
For many somebodies.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super, super inspiring. I think.
And I hate to keep rambling, but you talk about me as this artist who got to paint in space, got to do this. From the beginning of human spaceflight, Alexei Leonov with his colored pencils tied to string because he knew they'd float, and doing these kind of rudimentary sketches of orbital sunrise, and then later on an Apollo-Soyuz mission, he brought up charcoals and he did portraits of all of his crewmates. And in space now, we don't just work there. We, as human beings, we live there. We know that we need to have that part of us that's not just the science and the maintenance. We are we almost are obligated, I think, as human beings to be figuring out how to enjoy the experience as humans. And that is the musical instruments and the quilting and the photography and the painting and, probably any other way we can imagine going on up there now.
Yeah, I think also of Katie Coleman and Chris Hadfield doing so much music while they were up there. The one St. Patrick's Day where Katie Coleman did the kind of a St. Patrick's Day tribute and came floating down from the space station down into the camera view playing the flute was magic. Magic, just amazing.
It's great.
Awesome. I think you guys have all nailed it on the head. These examples here are just a tiny example of what happens when people who didn't necessarily define themselves as artists were given the chance to go to space. How much more of an immersive experience are we going to have when we send people who have maybe been doing art their whole lives? Nicole, you had a really good point. We're all on Spaceship Earth together, and I think that this project is going to really kind of inspire and have the power to change how we all see our Spaceship Earth. And with that, I would like to thank you all for taking time out of your Saturday to be with us today. We really appreciate all of the perspectives that you guys have given on this project, and looking forward to hopefully maybe even some of you guys might be on that first flight.
Don't put me on it. Don't make
Great
me do it.
crew. Be a great crew.
All right. And with that, before we head into our quick break, we do want to give a big thank you to all of our citizens of tomorrow, specifically our Escape Velocity citizens. These people contribute $10 or more to the show, and we're very thankful for your contributions. But we also have our Orbital subscribers as well. Our Orbital citizens contribute $5 or more per episode to the show, and honestly, it just blows my mind how generous you guys are and how much you're invested in the show to be able to contribute financially. It really helps us do what we do. And if you'd also like to become a citizen of tomorrow and contribute to the show, you can head to patreon.com/TMRO. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to have questions and comments from you, the community of tomorrow. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Science. It both draws us together and tears us apart. Brings discoveries to cure us and threaten us. It is neither good nor evil. It is what we decide to make of it. There is so much more to learn, and we are curious. Together, let's explore the science of tomorrow.
Hello and welcome back to our show. We are going to go ahead and dive right into some comments from last week's show. If you weren't around, last week's show was actually quite exciting. What did we talk about, Jared?
Well, I'll tell you what we talked about. We had a super cool guest on. It was Chris Blackerby from Astroscale.
Yes.
He's the COO of that. They were talking about the money to be made from space junk, which is kind of going back to what you were talking about, Athena, and how we can leverage these resources for the benefit of humanity. So it was some really cool stuff.
Very cool, yeah. And you know what? The YouTube and the Twitch and the community were all alit with some amazing comments. So let's go ahead and just dive right into it, shall we?
Yep.
The first comment we're going to go ahead and go into is from JackSpeed439, and from YouTube. They said, "Hello, this isn't about the show, but I would like to bring it up. I watched the SpaceX live broadcast with Elon and MZ. When MZ said that he could help attain world peace by taking artists to the moon and then letting them create art, I was shocked and a little teary. But what was the first time I had heard this? No, you on Tomorrow a while ago talked about STEAM instead of STEM and how important it was to get artists into space. So, you guys and a billionaire think the same when it comes to space and furthering humanity."
I like that last sentence.
Oh
you
my
and
gosh.
a billionaire
I
think
just-
the same.
I
I like that.
It was almost
Yes.
eerie how just appropriate this comment was, especially given the amazing conversation that was just had.
Yeah,
And
that was so good.
Yeah, so I mean, STEAM, as we all know, is quite important, especially, and if now you don't know that, then just rewind a few seconds. You'll learn all about
Science,
it.
technology,
good.
engineering, art, and mathematics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you for that lovely comment. And yes, we are on the exact same wavelength as Elon Musk. In fact, I don't know where our royalty
MZ.
checks are, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it says a lot about
Copyright.
wanting to send artists as well. That's
Yeah.
just such a great gesture of wanting to
Absolutely.
do that. And that's
Yeah.
something I really wanted. I think during our Mars roundtable, I said that at least one of the seats on the flight to Mars should be dedicated to an artist of some
Yeah.
kind. And I really feel like, I still strongly agree with that. And I feel like the people who are like very opposed to that are just being a bunch of soil sports and just
Soil
kind of.
sports?
Yes, soil sports. And they're just kind of being very like pedantic in the worst way.
Exactly, and that's the thing too. And a good point was brought up again in the conversation prior about how, yeah, you can send your rovers, you can send your robots, but when you send your humans, all of a sudden you have this beautiful element of something that you can't program into a machine, that you can't program into an instrument. And I mean, if you look at some of the biggest scientific revolutions on this planet, a lot of times they coincide with a really profound way of expressing them.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, we had the lunar landing, but would it have been as impactful if we didn't have the amazing imagery to go along with it, and then so on and so forth. So it really does go hand in hand, and I think that they have a beautiful synergy together. So, yay.
Yeah,
stuff.
for sure.
Good stuff indeed. We're going to go ahead and follow that comment from a comment from ADD Dude on YouTube. And they state, if NASA doesn't think it's worth it to actively listen for a life signal from Opportunity, then we shouldn't try and make them waste resources that are needed elsewhere. It's great that we can connect with these awesome robots and how they inspire kids, etc. But the real decisions that require an objective view of things shouldn't be made out of passion. That happens in politics way too much, so let's try and keep it out of science, please. One example, the Lunar Gateway. No matter the political tensions, the scientists and engineers of various countries' space agencies want to work together to advance humanity. National pride is a laughable thing compared to planetary pride anyways. Go Earth!
Yes, go
Yes.
Earth. I think that's a really good way to kind of conclude on the fact that just throughout all of human history, like politics has always been a huge impact on space and all of humanity. So a good way to really conclude on that is just say, like, okay, at the end of the day, we're still all Earthlings, and that's what we were before any civilizations really got put into place. So I think honestly, by going and traveling to other planets and actually obviously colonizing, that's what's going to, I think, start to potentially disintegrate all the separate civilizations that we might have, or the different governments we might have here on Earth. I really think there might be some form of unified government that might form specifically for Earthlings and for space.
Yeah, and I feel like, if we do end up colonizing other places, I feel like the government is going to be separate from the government here on Earth. I feel like
Yes,
if Mars is colonized, that's going to be a government of Mars that is completely separate of the one from Earth. Sure, they may work together, and I really do hope that they work together.
Yes, same.
And sort of like supply back and forth and other things like that. That would obviously be fantastic. But we also do have to understand that it's it's going to be different. But also, space is one of those things where it is the grand unifier.
Yep.
There's treaties in place that basically say that if you can render aid in space, you're obligated to do it.
Yeah.
And doing missions that are going to be long-term at very far distances with no easy ways of getting back. At that point, nationalities drop out of the perspective, and humanity and just essentially survival mode kicks in. So, and in survival mode, there is no nationality.
Yep.
There's no advantage
There's no
for
group.
being a
There's
certain
nothing.
nationality or coming from a certain space program.
Yeah.
It's just basically survive, and that's what the initial goal is going to be like.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what this commenter said about opportunity, and that if NASA says we shouldn't listen, then we shouldn't do it. Well, hang on a minute. That's where we as a people have the ability to be like, no, this is important to us. This is the tax dollars of the people that you're spending to fund this program, and if we want you to listen to opportunity, then you should listen to us. So I think you can't separate politics from government programs. It's always going to be a part of it. And even out of science, there's always politics in science as well. No matter how many times scientists try and say they're objective, there are always unconscious bias in everything that we do.
Absolutely.
So
Oh, yes,
you
yes.
can never remove the two.
I also I don't want to poo-poo the first part of that comment, but just a little bit on it. These decisions are not being made by people on the street. These decisions are being made by people at NASA headquarters who understand how missions work, how management works, and how the resources are distributed with that. It's also asking the experts at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory who've worked on this mission for the 14 years, what do you think is a reasonable amount of time to work with this? Obviously, 45 days did seem like an arbitrary number, because if you compare it to Spirit, which had 10 months of an active listening period, it does seem like...
That was the twin rover.
Yeah, that was the other rover. It just seems like that was a little bit arbitrary, but also we'll find out what happens at the end of that 45 days. Because NASA headquarters could decide we're going to extend it out for another 9 months, just like we gave Spirit the chance to do that. We're going to extend you out as well.
Is there the capability, if NASA gives up on opportunity, can they transfer, the commanding to a university or some kind of scientific research group?
So
has that been done before?
I don't think that has ever been done. That has not been done with a surface mission before. But there was a mission called Galaxy Evolution Explorer, GALEX, which looked in the, if I remember correctly, the ultraviolet at basically galaxy evolution. Towards the end of its mission in 2012, NASA actually handed it over to Caltech and basically said, here, You're in charge of the mission
Pass the
now.
torch.
Do whatever you'd like with it. And they actually operated it for about 1.5 years until it was
With
decommissioned.
their own funding, or
Yes. Yeah, Caltech took it over for 1.5 years and actually did that. So,
Wow.
Maybe you could do that with a rover.
Yeah.
See why not? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
If the
that's-
citizens of tomorrow want to help us look after opportunity, if NASA doesn't get to re-establish contact with
We'll adopt
then,
it.
Yeah.
We'll
you know,
totally adopt it.
let us know
Put
in
some
the
plants on
comments,
it.
and
yeah.
that
We'll
could be
take
a
it.
new Patreon goal.
there
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
I even think there was a GOES satellite that was transferred over to do like communication with the South Pole, and also I think there's been a couple geostationary satellites as well that have basically been handed over to humanitarian groups
They should do that
before
with
in
the
order to do
debris.
that kind of stuff. So
Also, like, because you're not allowed
hand
to.
it over to debris.
Yeah, I feel like you're so garbage. Can you clean it up for me? Because you're not allowed to clean up other nations' garbage, like depending on the certain mission.
That's
I mean, we were
true.
talking about that last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that there's strict laws that you're not allowed to clean up certain space debris if you have, like what I was talking about earlier. If it's owned by a different nation, then you're not supposed to touch it, depending on obviously the rules. So to pass it on, that might be a good idea because it's all for humanity.
There we
Cool.
go.
You're
Awesome.
welcome, Internet.
Yeah.
Solving the
Here's
world's
my space
problems
garbage.
one by one. Okay, so the next comment, last certainly not least, is from Simon, and this comment is actually from our community. There's always a whole lot of interesting conversations going on there. Tomorrow community, so check that out. And this particular comment states, no matter what the final version looks like, will it have folding legs or station? Oh, I should probably let you know what this comment is referring to. This was actually from a thread from the BFR that had been released, and they were basically talking about the landing mechanism. And Simon brought up, again, will it have folding legs or stationary? It will not solve the main problem, which is landing site. The trouble is the moon or Mars solar. Its density, integrity, plainness. You need to build a landing site. It's fine if you plan to go around the moon without landing, but such descent as depicted in the BFR's animation will end with a dangerous tilt without a built landing site. The mass of this type of spacecraft is no joke. It would be very interesting to know how the company plans to deal with it. And
Well, I mean, regolith is not a fun material to have touch and or land on.
gosh, no, I was gonna say, Jared, I
got something to talk
Yes.
about.
I can feel it.
Because people always are like, NASA's not innovating anymore or anything like that. They're not doing anything that's cutting edge. It's all down in Hawthorne and everything like that. Guess what they're doing? On the Mars 2020 rover, they're doing a new type of entry, descent, and landing where they're going to be extremely accurate with it. And what they are basically going to do with the landing system is that they've uploaded a map of the landing area, and there are cameras on board of the landing system. And those cameras are going to compare the surface, the terrain that it sees around itself to the landing map there, and basically say, this area looks a little bit better, I'm going to fly over here. Or even cooler to me is that the computer may say, ooh, this area is going to be more scientifically interesting. I'm going to fly the rover and land it over here. So you don't necessarily have to have a nice, easy landing site to be at. Yeah, it's really nice to be able to do that, and you know, it's super important to have a nice flat surface. But at the same time, you kind of don't need it really, because you should be able to do that. I mean, the lunar excursion module landed on the moon without the ability to have a nice landing site, and I just realized I'm comparing a tiny little thing to the massive. So never mind, scratch that analogy. But I don't feel like that's going to be a problem. Also, another thing that could make it a non-issue is the fact that the first couple of BFSs that are going to land either on the moon or Mars, they're going to be uncrewed. It's going to be a bunch of cargo. And there may actually be robots on board that will end up building what you've got to land. It shouldn't be it might be an issue for the first couple of landings, but even then, if this technology that NASA's developing actually ends up working out pretty well, it's honestly a non-issue.
We got it in the bag.
So cool.
It is something that, obviously, Simon is correct. That is a problem. It's just that the amazing people at JPL who are always thinking like 10 to 15 years ahead of everyone else, they're on it. So
I like that this episode has become a very pro JPL. Like every
they're awesome though.
They
do
really good
amazing
stuff.
things. So we like the other NASA centers, but JPL just kind of
down the street.
just kind of own. So
Yeah.
anyways,
Gotta love it.
That's
Gotta
so
love
cool.
it.
That's great.
All right, so that just about wraps up all the comments from last week. But before we say goodbye, I have another heartfelt message to give you, the world. I would like to sincerely thank the Escape Velocity citizens. Oh gosh, these folks, they contribute $10 an episode. Oh my gosh, that's just amazing. And then the next folks I'd like to give a shout out to are the Orbital citizens. They contribute $5 an episode. Our suborbital citizens who contribute $2.50 an episode. Just gonna go ahead and let you try to find your name. And moving on. And of course, our ground support citizens who contribute $1 to $2.49 per episode. Now go ahead and get your squinty eyes on and try to find your name.
I can't read that. I have my contacts in and I can't read
What
that.
are these? Words for ants? Anyways.
Words for ants.
You're not wrong.
I don't mean to be completely joking when I say it's a heartfelt thank you, but these generous people really do make the show possible, and it allows us to do what we love, and it's an all around, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. They help make the show happen, so thank you for supporting us. And of course, as mentioned earlier, there's a lot of ways you can help the show. You can do something as simple as subscribing and ringing that really cute little bell somewhere underneath us over here.
Yep.
Of course, you would do that because you love us. And if you would like to contribute yourself, then go ahead and head on over to patreon.com/TMRO, and you too can try to pick your name out of that lovely barrage of names.
And I also want to say, don't forget, we've got a community where we actually talk.
we do.
Community.tmro.tv. We have a Discord channel that you could jump in on.
That's where the magic happens.
And we're all very active on that Discord channel, and you can both praise and not praise us if you want to, and we will get some very good comebacks for you with that as well. Also, share us with your friends and stuff, because space is like cool. I don't know if you noticed. So
there's a lot of it.
Like, come on.
It's on trend right
space.
Like, I'm sure your grandma is
room
like
for all of us.
Your grandma is incredibly interested in lift to drag ratios.
Yeah.
Who isn't?
Grandma.
I mean, come on, do it for Grandma.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Do it for her.
Right here. All right, and so make sure you go ahead and tune in next Saturday. Our guest is going to be Chris Johnson. He's a space law advisor at the Secure World Foundation and an adjunct professor of law at Georgetown Law. So I'm sure there's going to be plenty of fascinating tidbits we will get from that conversation.
I'm super excited because I don't understand anything about space law.
Me neither.
So,
You will.
Yes,
I know.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
Everyone wanted to know about the Outer Space Treaty and what
Yes, I really want to know about that. That's why I'm
but that's
excited.
the
New
only
projects
space law I
being
know.
announced, there's actually laws that kind of aren't favorable to like where we want to head in our space future. So what needs to change? What needs to happen?
Absolutely.
Like, I don't want to know how it's formulated, how it really gets put together. So
absolutely.
I'm excited
And
for
with
that.
everything we talked about on today's show, I mean, with the way that just the progress we're making, we're going to have to start thinking about these things sooner than later.
Oh, yeah.
So now, Lisa, what time and where can these folks tune in to watch this fascinating interview with Chris Johnson?
Next week at 1800 UTC every Saturday. That's when we're on.
There it is.
And yeah, if you stick around today in After Dark, which is going to be just after we wrap this, we're going to have Tim Dodd and Emory Stagmer back on to talk about the technical details of BFR. So stick around. There's the perk of watching live.
Yay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you had a good time. We know we did. And we will see you next week. Bye.